Welcome to podcasts from ReEngine Consulting. We're excited to be bringing you tools, techniques, and innovations in the world of public sector continuous improvement so that you and your team can achieve more with less effort. Well, welcome to the first ever ReEngine podcast. We're hoping that this podcast is a great place to discuss topics, tools, and techniques for government improvement, strategic planning, data analytics, all those things critical to improving government operations. And we're hoping that these lessons really reach out to people, and the public servants that do their critical work can really benefit from some of these discussions. These are going to be topics that we see in our work all the time as government improvement consultants. And so we're hoping that having these conversations out there in the internet ether will mean that work can start improving. So I think I'd like to first introduce my partner here at ReEngine Consulting, Alfredo Maikiu. He's our co-founder and director of strategy.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Alfredo Maikiu, and this is our life's work. Our passion is to be able to help organizations and people like you, dedicated public servants, to get the wherewithal to be able to improve the work world around them and the quality of work that they do for the public.
Great. So, Alfredo, can you tell us a little bit about your background and history?
So, yeah, I used to be assistant professor of history at West Point. Taught there, had a military career, like 20 years in the federal government, and then 10 years in the state government, and now we're helping local governments all around the United States. And really, that's a bit of my background. Really enjoy strategy, and I enjoy leadership, and I enjoy all the arts of continuous improvement and how to apply those to organizations.
Fantastic. My name is David Johnson. I'm a co-founder as well and director of operations here at ReEngine. I started with my master's in public administration from Texas A&M, and then I've worked at a couple of Texas state agencies, such as the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, which is where I met Alfredo. And we started doing continuous improvement together so many years ago. And then we both worked as well together at the Texas Workforce Commission. And now we both work for ReEngine Consulting, doing that same great work, but for lots of different government agencies. So I'd like to take you through a little bit about what ReEngine is. ReEngine is a small consulting firm, but growing, based here in Austin, Texas. We actually have contracts throughout the United States and actually international contracts as well, just recently with the United Nations. So we do our work really a lot here in Austin, also in a lot of other states and cities, as Alfredo mentioned, and then now starting in the international arena as well, which we're pretty excited about. We have a number of different certifications here, given our size and our makeup. We're DBE certified with the U.S. Department of Transportation in a number of states. We have our MBE and service-stable veteran status as well with a number of states, and of course our small business certification with the SBA. And that's kind of a little bit about the organizational structure of ReEngine, and Alfredo is going to take us through a little bit about what we do here at ReEngine, what's important to us, and how we try to make a difference.
So I think it's important for you all to recognize that we have a calling, right? So we have a calling to provide frontline government and public sector staff with the wherewithal to be able to affect positive change in your world, to be able to take on improvement projects, deploy different ideas of how we can go through iteratively the improvement cycle. Sometimes we call it plan, do, study, act. And that can result in better understanding of the work that we do and a more profound service or product for the public that we're sworn to serve. That's really our calling. And what we've discovered is that there's really two ways to do that transfer of knowledge and skill and methods that we have. The first one is through training and a lot of discussions just like this one, and a lot of assessment of what we have learned from other engagements and other governments, and what we can share with you. The second way is to just roll up our sleeves and do projects, right? And to actually get in there and help folks like you take on some aspirational goal, something that you want to be able to achieve. Maybe that's something that's been elusive because of a challenge in resources or some policy constraints or other reasons that you haven't been able to achieve that, and then really get after it. And in doing so, what we've discovered is that there is really a proven methodology that's an integration of lean methodologies that started in the manufacturing sector, Six Sigma, that had their start in the semiconductor industry and IT, and then also from the theory of constraints. So we've kind of blended those together so that we have a very strong government quality and improvement methodology, specifically for the public sector. And just to sort of run through, there's 7 simple phases that we feel really resonates with us public servants, of who we count ourselves among, right? That's our background as well, of all the ReEngine team members. And that is to first charter out what we want to do. What is our goal? How do we want to serve? Design the project. Make sure that we get buy-in from peers and stakeholders and bosses. And then we really want to make sure that we have a common vision, that we get consensus. And so then we go into our vision it phase, where we try to figure out what does good look like around here when we do our work. And what are some possible ideas of how we could begin to affect that change. Then the next thing that we do is we go out and we really start to map our current state, right? What our as is. We had a common boss in the past that would say, you have to know what your as is, Alfredo and David.
In a Mississippi accent.
In a Mississippi accent. And so we really want to portray that. But the value of that is not just in the blueprint that you create. The value is also in being able to harvest all the ideas, the creative notions, the potential solutions that people either have harbored and not had the opportunity to share, or we haven't had this sort of creative swirl of synergy in terms of sharing these ideas. And so we want to harvest all of those and capture it as we go through our map it processes of our current status quo. Then it's really time to start really deep analysis. We call it the gap it phase, where we look at where we are and where we want to be, and we figure out what distance has to be traveled. It's almost like a subtraction exercise. We have to do this in order to get where we want to be. Now certainly during the charter, we look at data as well that might be available, but this is the time where maybe we've done some experiments, we've gathered some data, we've pulled in some sets, we've got some qualitative understanding now from due diligence conversations with stakeholders. We understand the real needs and desires of our customers, and we pull that all in and do that deep assessment, which we call gap it. Then I think the team is qualified, and you'll be the judge, but the team is qualified then to start building the new system, right? What are the actual changes? How do we affect those changes? What do we want to build into where we are? Do we want to reduce the number and consolidate the number of reviews? Do we want to take some things like an extra decision that was not necessarily necessary because we can do things first in, first out. So we don't have to struggle about who gets what work. It's assigned as it comes in. What are the different ways to simplify the processes that we have, to clarify what's going on in the organization, and to make sure that any resources are not conflicting. We call that the build it phase, where we actually design it. And we actually use the blueprints that we created in the map it, and then we make the changes physically on those maps to be able to reflect the new changes for the organization. A lot of times there's a lot of other intended changes in terms of policies and procedures, and that's all part of the project plan. Then we launch it. That's the moment where we start. We were doing things a different way, Monday and Tuesday, and Thursday and Friday we're going to do them a new way. And it's important for there to be a great bit of pomp and circumstances and everyone to realize that we're going to be doing things a different way, so that everyone has sort of permission to do things in the improved manner and understands the rationale and the new expectations of them. And then finally, the track it, right? So how do we made a gain, how do we sustain that over time? How do we measure that? How do we collect the necessary information and the metrics to know that the changes that we made are actually having the intended purpose and that we're seeing progress within the organization? And that's it. That's the 7 phases: charter it, vision it, map it, gap it, build it, launch it, and track it. And we've discovered that that's a very effective way to execute projects, and also a great way to transfer the knowledge, this improvement science and the body of knowledge of improving in the public sector, to transfer it to you. And we often do that with projects. We call it crawl, walk, run, where the leadership and most of the execution rests in the hands of the ReEngine facilitator. And then during the walk project, that's passed off to staff, where a lot of the facilitation exercises, the methods, and
the shared role
and the tools are actually, and a lot of the sessions are done by the frontline staff participating in the project. And then finally, the run is where the team that's there, ReEngine kind of pulls into a teach, coach, and mentor type role, and the organization executes that project with our guidance, of course, and with us being still there, but then ready to execute the 4th project and the 5th project and the 6th project. So hopefully that gives you an understanding of how ReEngine applies its value to target those things that are so important in any organization, but especially in government, of productivity, of quality, of customer service, of timeliness, of making sure that we have financial measures that demonstrate that we're spending dollars wisely, and that we're tracking our growth and development as a team. Want to also, just as an invitation, to invite you to continue to be interested and participate. And we look forward to sharing our learning and our path with you, and helping you to strengthen your organization and to improve continuously.
Absolutely. So let me ask you a question. As folks are sitting and wondering if they're going to listen to the next podcast and the next podcast, when they think about continuous improvement, maybe they're kind of daring to believe that their work could get better.
Right.
What kinds of processes does this work with? Is it like permitting? Those kind of transactional processes? Is that where the main stick is here, or can it work with more? What do we see as like the target areas?
Well, that's a great question. So because of the lineage of going back to lean times, a lot of folks think that process improvement focuses on those sort of transactional processes, like permitting, like applications, like eligibility, and it does. It applies to that. But what we've discovered is that it applies to nearly every process. Well, I think every process in government. Like, for example, policymaking. Policymaking has a process. Policymaking has its own constraints, right? Can we get the executive director to sit there, hear the new policy and bless off on it so that we can disseminate it to staff, right? There's a lot of challenges in those other areas that government has a myriad of responsibilities and so many other processes that go well beyond the transactional. But we have investigative environments, we have environments where we are basically customer service focused. We have environments where maybe we are working with call centers and taking in information. We have environments of procurement. We have environments of purchasing that we have. And all of those environments can benefit from going through this government quality and improvement process, whether that's in training or whether that's in projects.
Fantastic. Well, So we're eager to hear from you, as Alfredo said. Please reach out. We really like to know what kind of things challenge you. So if you want to send us an email at info@ReEngineConsulting.com, we'd love to hear your ideas on what kind of things interrupt or disrupt your work, and some ideas for future podcasts. Hopefully that will be the result. We'll talk about them here and can discuss our experience and ideas and tips and tricks and techniques that could really help. So if you're skeptical, please give us a chance to convince you. And please stay tuned.
Thank you so much.